Most people die in ways we can make sense of: old age, illness, or accidents. But every so often, death comes in ways that feel almost unreal. In this video, we'll take a look at 5 true stories where everyday people lost their lives in the most disturbing and unexpected ways. These aren't scenes from horror films that actually happened, and they reveal just how fast an ordinary day can spiral into something truly terrifying. It was December night in 2002 on New York City's sidewalks. Among the crowd was 26-year-old Sean Doyle, a bartender, a friend, just an ordinary guy out for a night of drinks with his buddy Michael Wright and Michael's girlfriend. What started off as a casual night quickly turned. Something shifted. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was jealousy bubbling beneath the surface. But at some point, Michael became convinced that Sean was flirting with his girlfriend. No one knows if it was true, but in Michael's eyes, it was enough. Tension crackled between the two men. Words were exchanged. Witnesses later recalled a struggle breaking out on the street. Sean's voice rang out into the cold night. "No, don't break my legs." That's when everything unraveled. In a sudden, horrifying moment, Michael did something no one watching could have imagined. He shoved Sean into an open manhole right there on the sidewalk, an 18-foot drop into darkness. But the fall wasn't what killed him. Beneath the street was a steam tunnel. A broken main had turned it into a subterranean hell. Scalding steam poured out from ruptured pipes, and the water below had reached temperatures that could melt flesh in seconds. Sean survived the fall. He was still alive when emergency crews arrived. His voice echoed up the tunnel, begging for help, but no one could reach him. The temperature inside was over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The steam was so intense, even trained rescuers couldn't descend without risking their own lives. For 4 excruciating hours, Sean remained trapped in that tunnel, fully conscious. He was literally being cooked alive, his skin blistering, his organs shutting down, every second more agonizing than the last. And through it all, he screamed. By the time they pulled him out, there was nothing anyone could do. The forensic reports were chilling. Dr. Judy Melinek, the pathologist who examined Sean's remains, said the temperature readings from his body maxed out the instruments at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. But that was only the limit of the tool. In truth, it was likely much, much hotter. His skin had peeled off. His internal organs were destroyed by heat, yet there were no broken bones, no trauma to the head, which meant he had felt everything, every second of pain, every second of helplessness. Dr. Melinek, a professional who had seen countless horrific cases, later admitted that this was the one that haunted her the most. When people asked her what the worst way to die was, she would pause and say, "You don't want to know." But when they insisted, she would tell them about Sean, about the steam, about the screams, about the slow, merciless wait for death. Michael Wright was arrested, charged. His girlfriend tried to argue it was all a tragic accident that spun out of control, but the court didn't buy it. This wasn't just a fight gone too far. This was murder, deliberate and brutal, and yet no sentence, no courtroom outcome could erase what happened that night. New York is a city that's seen it all: crime, chaos, tragedy. But this was different. Sean Doyle's death wasn't just shocking. It was cruel in a way that lingered. It wasn't over in an instant. It dragged on for hours, unseen, underground.
A memorial will take place tomorrow for Debrina Kawam, the woman fatally set on fire in the subway. It will be held at the First Baptist Church of Sheepshead Bay.
It was the morning of December 22nd, 2024 in Brooklyn. At the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station, one train sat idle, its doors open, its fluorescent lights humming under the early sky. Inside, a 57-year-old woman named Dinah Kawam was sleeping in one of the cars, alone. Unbothered, vulnerable, the kind of moment that passes without notice in a city that never stops moving. Dana hadn't always been here on a subway bench with the world forgetting her. Decades earlier, she was the kind of girl people remembered. Back in Little Falls, New Jersey, she had been a cheerleader with a magnetic smile, known for her energy, charm, and that rebellious punk rock edge. Voted most punk in her high school yearbook. A waitress at Perkins Pancake House who could light up a room. She dreamed of being a flight attendant. Her eyes were always looking up. But life didn't follow the script. Somewhere along the way, things shifted. She battled addiction, lost stability, fell into homelessness, moved through shelters across New York City. Still, some people from her past remembered her. Mark Montaigne, an old classmate, would later say she was the life of the party. He never could have imagined her story would end like this. That morning a man walked into that same subway car. His name was Sebastian Zapita Khalil, 33 years old. An undocumented immigrant from Guatemala, previously deported in 2018, but somehow back in the city, unnoticed, unchecked. He approached the sleeping woman. No words, no warning. And then, with chilling calm, he took out a lighter and set her clothes on fire. The flames erupted fast. In seconds, they wrapped around Dana's body as she lay unconscious. A bystander recorded it on video, Sebastian calmly walking away from the fire he had started, then sitting down on a bench nearby, watching. Commuters were shocked. One person called for help. Security footage later showed NYPD officers arriving, but one of them walked right past her, didn't stop, didn't help. That moment captured on camera would become the center of public outrage. It was an MTA worker who finally grabbed a fire extinguisher and rushed to put out the flames, but it was too late. Dana was pronounced dead just minutes later at 7:48 a.m. from severe burns and smoke inhalation. For over a week, no one even knew her name. She had no ID. Her face was unrecognizable, but forensic teams refused to give up. Using advanced fingerprinting, they eventually matched her identity. On December 31st, they confirmed it. Dana Kawam. By then, the story had spread. Not just the horrifying details of her death, but the life that came before. Former neighbors recalled seeing her outside her mother's house, unaware her mom had moved. Others remembered her laughter, her spirit. And now they were left asking, how did it come to this? How does someone so full of life end up here? Sebastian Zapita Khalil was arrested later that same day. Some students had seen the video, recognized him, and tipped off the police. When they stopped him, he still had the lighter in his pocket. Under questioning, he claimed he didn't remember anything that he'd been drinking. But memory loss wouldn't be enough to erase what was captured on video. He was charged with first-degree and second-degree murder, along with arson. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. But no amount of punishment can rewind what happened.
When the body of a nuclear power plant worker was found dead inside a teacher's toilet.
It was the evening of February 28, 1989, in Makoji Village Town in Japan's Fukushima Prefecture. That night, a 23-year-old elementary school teacher had just returned home after a long day. Her room was part of a simple dormitory for school staff, located far from the main roads. She went to use the bathroom, a moment like any other. But as she stepped inside and looked down, she froze. There, inside the toilet opening, something didn't look right. At first, she thought it was a shoe. Confused, she leaned closer. Then her heart stopped. A human leg. Panic took over. She ran out, shouting for help. Moments later, police arrived, and what they found would disturb everyone. Wedged deep inside the narrow piping of the septic tank was a body. The opening in the floor was only about 8 inches wide. The pipe below, just 14. Yet somehow, someone had managed to squeeze into it head up, eyes tilted toward the toilet opening as if staring through it. The victim was a 26-year-old man named Naoyuki Kano, a sales manager who worked with nuclear energy companies in the region, known for being responsible and kind. He had been missing for several days. Now here he was, lifeless, half-naked, and trapped in one of the most horrifying positions imaginable. The official cause of death was listed as hypothermia. No wounds, no signs of struggle. He was shirtless, clutching a neatly folded shirt to his chest, his feet bare. The police offered a disturbing explanation. They believed Naoyuki had entered the septic tank voluntarily, that he had crawled into the narrow pipe to spy on women using the toilet, got stuck, and slowly froze to death in the bitter winter cold. But something about that story didn't sit right. Naoyuki's friends were stunned. No history of perversion, no behavioral red flags. Someone who was active in local politics, even recently involved in a village chief election that had stirred controversy among residents, especially those with ties to the nearby nuclear power plant. And the more people looked, the stranger it all seemed. The layout of the septic system made the theory almost impossible. The toilet opening was too small for an adult to slip through, and even the outdoor maintenance hatch would have required a painful, awkward effort, hard to imagine anyone managing it without help. Then there were the shoes. One was found inside the tank near his head. The other, discovered far away, on a riverbank. His car had been parked near the dormitory, keys still in the ignition, doors unlocked, as if he planned to come right back. Nothing about it felt right. The teacher who discovered the body also raised eyebrows. She claimed she saw the shoe through the toilet in poor lighting without lifting the lid. Some wondered how that was possible. Why hadn't she waited for the police to inspect it? She had known Naoyuki before, helped him during a phone harassment issue. Their relationship was reportedly friendly, but was there something else? Something unsaid? The case grew colder by the day. Then people began drawing connections. Just a month earlier, a major incident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant caused a temporary shutdown. Not long after, the operator involved died by suicide. Rumors swirled. Whispers of cover-ups, political pressure. Could Naoyuki, who worked with nuclear clients and had just been involved in a heated election, have known something he shouldn't? The questions piled up, but the answers never came. Despite protests from villagers and Naoyuki's loved ones, the police ruled his death an accident. The file was closed. Officially, it was chalked up to a tragic mistake. A man who crawled into a septic tank for reasons no one wanted to admit. But in the village, the story lived on. It became folklore, a ghost story whispered between generations, a cautionary tale filled with unanswered questions and disturbing imagery. Years passed, then decades. And as the internet grew, so did curiosity. Naoyuki's story resurfaced in forums, on YouTube, and across social media, shared by people stunned by the bizarre, eerie details. His name became linked to one of Japan's strangest unsolved mysteries.
Tonight, we are learning the victim of a bee attack was a husband and a grandfather. Tonight, the Harlan County Coroner's Office identified him as 59-year-old Michael Alford. They say he died after being stung by a swarm of yellow jackets earlier this week.
It was Monday afternoon in 2023. In the wooded hills of Harlan, Kentucky, Michael Wayne Alford, 59 years old, was outside his home, working through a few simple chores. He bent down to move an old, forgotten bag of potting soil near the edge of the property. It was heavy, damp, and had been sitting there for some time. As he lifted it, the silence shattered. A swarm of wasps burst out, furious and fast. Michael barely had a chance to react. In seconds, they were on him, stinging, swarming, relentless. The venom surged through his body like wildfire. His breathing grew shallow almost immediately. Inside the house, his daughter, Marlana Ledford, heard the commotion and bolted outside. What she found stopped her cold. Her father stumbling, struggling to breathe, his skin swelling, his body collapsing. She dropped beside him and began CPR, trying to force life back into his lungs. Moments later, Michael's son Mitch arrived and joined her. Together, they fought to keep their father alive. Hands trembling, hearts racing. But the wasps didn't stop. They kept attacking. It was like nature itself had turned on them. They called 911. Paramedics rushed to the scene and took over. But by the time they arrived, the venom had already done its damage. Michael's breathing had slowed to a whisper. He was fading. They loaded him into the ambulance. His children watched helplessly as the sirens disappeared down the road. Not long after, just before 6 p.m., Michael was pronounced dead at the hospital. The cause, respiratory failure brought on by the stings. He had only been outside for a few minutes. It should have been just another day. No one expected it. How could they? Michael was more than just a man doing yard work. He was a husband, a father of 3, a grandfather to 11, a soft-spoken man with a deep love for the simple things, four-wheeling through the hills, playing piano in the quiet of his home, collecting knives with childlike fascination. He had been married to his wife, Chi-Chi, for 41 years. She lost her partner that day, suddenly, violently, without warning. The man she'd built a life with was gone, just like that, and his children, they were the last ones to hold his hand, the last ones to look into his eyes as he struggled to stay alive. Mitch would later say, "It's a big burden on us, my mom and the whole family," words that can't even begin to carry the weight they feel. What made the tragedy worse was how brutally random it all was. Michael had pre-existing health conditions, including heart issues, things he managed day by day. But no one thinks a bag of dirt will be the end. No one thinks death is lurking just under a layer of soil. What's even more terrifying is how rare, and yet how real, these deaths are. Between 2011 and 2021, nearly 800 people in the U.S. died from bee, wasp, or hornet stings. 72 deaths a year, quiet, sudden, often unseen. And the most common cause? Respiratory failure. Experts say when a swarm attacks, the best thing you can do is run. Don't scream and just run. But when you don't even see it coming, when your enemy is hidden in a bag of soil, there's no time to react. Michael didn't have life insurance. The family was not only dealing with grief, but also the unbearable pressure of funeral expenses. His daughter Marlana started a GoFundMe, desperate to find help. By Thursday, the community had raised a little over half of what they needed. Enough to ease the burden, but not the heartbreak. They planned his funeral at Avart's funeral home. It would be a small service, filled with memories and mourning. As the family prepared to say goodbye, they were left with a question that haunted them. How do you lose someone so good, so suddenly? It was May 21st, 2023. 20-year-old Zachary Porter had just wrapped up his sophomore year studying economics at Washington University in St. Louis. He was full of energy, full of plans. Zachary loved the outdoors, really loved it. So when he and 3 friends flew out to Alaska to explore before the summer rush, it felt like the start of something magical, a trip they'd all remember forever. They arrived in Hope, a quiet little community about 90 minutes south of Anchorage, and by that afternoon they found themselves walking along the Turnagain Arm mudflats. At low tide, the flats look like solid ground, smooth, still, almost inviting, but beneath that surface is something much more sinister. The fine silt acts like quicksand. As the group strolled along the seemingly harmless terrain, Zachary suddenly sank into the mud. At first, it didn't seem serious. Maybe he'd just stepped in a soft patch. He tried to wiggle free, but the more he moved, the deeper he sank. His friends rushed to help, pulling and digging, but every effort only dragged him further down. Panic started to set in. Realizing they were out of their depth, one of them called 911. The time was 5:45 p.m. They didn't know it yet, but the clock had already started ticking, and it was ticking fast. The tide in Turnagain Arm is one of the fastest rising in the world. And the water? It was already on its way. Help was coming. Fire crews from Girdwood and Hope Sunrise were dispatched, but they were still nearly an hour away. Meanwhile, Zachary was trapped. His friends stood by, helpless, watching the ocean creep closer and closer, every wave bringing with it more fear, more desperation. Rescuers arrived as quickly as they could, bringing specialized equipment, trained hands, and sheer determination, but the silt had already turned against them. Every attempt to pull Zachary out only deepened the challenge. The incoming tide made the mud softer, heavier, more unforgiving. By 6:43 p.m., just under an hour after the emergency call, Zachary was fully submerged, gone. The rescuers had done everything they could, but it wasn't enough. By 7 p.m., they reached the spot where he had been, but it was too late. The mission had shifted from rescue to recovery. The next morning, Zachary's body was recovered. His father, Todd Porter, remembered all the hikes they used to take. Zachary was always the first to get lost in nature, always pushing just a little further to see what was out there. His mother, Susan Ryder, spoke about his dreams, how he wanted to travel, to see the world, to become someone who made a difference. His sister Elizabeth shared how kind he was, how intelligent, how he had mentored younger baseball players and sailing students. He was quiet, but he led by example, always. His baseball coach, Ray DeLava, described him as a quiet leader. Zachary wasn't just an adventurer. He was the kind of person who wanted to share the world with others, who wanted to lift others up, who believed that life was meant to be experienced, not just endured. The mudflats that took him had claimed lives before. The last fatal incident was nearly a decade earlier, and yet the danger still lurked, silent and invisible, until it was too late. Christy Peterson, an EMT and administrator with the Hope Sunrise Volunteer Fire Department, has seen what that land can do. She says the danger is often underestimated. People think they can walk across it, and they think they'll be fine. But once you're in, time is no longer your friend.